My name is Hadley Brooks, I'm 35, and that New Year's Eve was supposed to be just a normal family dinner. A warm table, soft laughter, half-finished glasses of wine. Everything looked like a perfect family. Until my dad stood up. He raised his glass, looked straight at me, and smirked. Still single at 35? A few people laughed, not because it was funny, but because they didn't know how else to react. Before I could say anything, my mom added, her voice gentle but cold. Some people are alone for a reason. The room didn't get louder, but something shifted. 8 years of silence inside me collapsed into a single moment. I set my glass down, smiled, and said something no one in that room was ready to hear. I'm not alone. I've been married for years. The entire room went silent. If you want to find out what happened next when an 8-year secret was exposed, comment 1 to watch the full story. To understand why that one sentence made the entire table fall silent, you have to understand what kind of family I come from. My father believes in things you can see: a spotless house, a perfectly trimmed lawn, a family easy to explain to other people. He didn't just want things to be good, he wanted them to look good. My mother was a little different. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't hurt you directly, but she had her own way, smiling, while saying things that made you question yourself. She called it caring. But I knew it was how she kept everything within her version of acceptable. My family isn't the kind you'd call cruel. They pay their bills on time, they go to church, they bring food to neighbors when someone's sick. From the outside, they're a model family. But on the inside, love always came with conditions. You had to live the right way. Choose the right path. Become the version they could proudly talk about. If you fit in, you were loved. If you didn't, you became a problem that needed fixing. And in that family, my brother was the proof of success. And me, I was the one they never quite knew how to explain. My brother was everything my parents ever wanted. He got married early, bought a house close to them, had 2 kids, a life easy to sum up in one sentence. And then there was me. I left town after college, lived in a different city, no kids, no traditional life. I didn't do anything wrong, didn't cause trouble, didn't depend on anyone. But to them, I was still the problem. Not because I was bad, but because I was different. And the saddest part is, after a long time, I started to believe it too. That maybe I really was the one who didn't fit. If you've ever been compared to someone in your own family, comment 1. If there was one thing that kept widening the distance between me and my family, it was my job. I'm a director of crisis operations for a disaster relief organization. It sounds impressive when you say it quickly. But the reality isn't pretty. It's 2 a.m. calls because a storm suddenly changed direction. Standing in a temporary command center with 3 phones ringing nonstop. A list of hundreds of people who need shelter before nightfall. I coordinate emergency housing, deploy response teams, set up transport routes, and make decisions when there aren't enough resources for everyone. Some days success is simply this: a family doesn't have to sleep in their car. An elderly person gets their medication back. A town has clean water before it's forgotten. There are no perfect photos in this job. No long speeches of praise, but it matters. At least to me. To my family. Chasing disasters isn't a future. That's what my father always said. He said it like I was playing a role, and one day I'd grow up and live the right way. My mom was softer. That kind of job probably doesn't leave you time for a family. As if the problem wasn't that they didn't understand me. It was that I had chosen wrong. And after a while, I realized they weren't asking to understand. They were asking to confirm that I was wrong. If you only heard my family tell it, you'd think I was a successful woman, just missing something important. Someone with no one waiting for her at home. At every gathering, the questions were always the same. Are you seeing anyone? When are you going to settle down? Don't you feel lonely? At first I answered, politely, briefly. But over time, I realized they weren't asking to understand. They were asking to confirm what they already believed, that I was lacking. That I wasn't enough, that my life had a problem. My father would often say, success doesn't mean anything if you have no one beside you. My mother was softer. Maybe you're just too busy to make room for anyone else. It sounded like concern, but underneath was a conclusion already made. I didn't argue, not because I agreed, but because I knew no answer would ever change their minds. And after a while, I started doing the easiest thing. I smiled, nodded, and let them keep believing that I was living an incomplete life. The truth is, I've never been alone. Not for a single day in the past 8 years. His name is Liam Bellamy. I met him at a disaster recovery conference in New Orleans. On an afternoon, I almost left early because I was exhausted. He's an architect, specializing in housing for areas hit by hurricanes, floods, and wildfires. We argued the first time we met. I said we needed speed. He said we needed quality. Then he looked at me and said something I never forgot. It has to be fast. And worth it. We talked for 4 hours straight after that. And 7 months later, we were married. No big church, no lavish reception, just 11 people, a light rain, and a promise that felt real. We built a life in Atlanta. Not perfect, but honest. A small house, a dog that's afraid of thunder, late dinners after long work days. He knows what I need before I even say it, and most importantly, he listens. Something I never had in my own family. People often ask me one question: why would you hide something this big for 8 years? The answer isn't that I was ashamed. I've never been ashamed of Liam. The truth is, I knew exactly what would happen if I told them. My father would turn our marriage into a trial. Where is he from? What's his family like? Is his job stable? Why didn't you have a proper wedding? He wouldn't ask to understand. He'd ask to judge. And I didn't want the person I love to become a test in front of my family. Liam knew that. One time I asked him, "Am I doing the wrong thing?" He didn't answer right away. He just held my hand and said, "I don't need to be accepted by people who haven't learned to respect you." That sentence is why I chose silence. Not because I was weak, but because I was protecting what mattered most to me. If you relate to Hadley, comment too. My marriage isn't the kind you show off online, but it's real. Liam and I live in Atlanta. A small house, more books than we probably need, and a dog named Murphy, who treats every thunderstorm like the end of the world. Our schedules are chaotic. Some weeks I'm in one state handling a crisis, while he's in another designing storm-resistant homes. There are dinners that don't start until 10 p.m. Days where all we manage is a quick "are you okay?" before falling asleep. But in all that chaos, we always have each other. He can tell I'm exhausted just by the sound of my voice. I know he pretends not to care about awards, but keeps every thank you letter. We don't need perfect. We just need real. And maybe that's why I kept this life private. Not to hide it, but to protect it. Because I knew if I brought it to the family table, it wouldn't be appreciated. It would be analyzed, judged, turned into something that needed to be explained. And I didn't want that, so I chose something else. I showed up alone, every holiday, every birthday, as if there was no one waiting for me at home. At first, keeping the secret made me feel safe. I didn't have to explain, didn't have to argue, didn't have to hear questions that made everything feel smaller. But over time, that silence started to come at a cost. Every time I went home alone, the seat beside me was empty. My mom would say, "You could bring someone with you," as if I just needed to find someone. My dad would joke, "Less food to pay for." Everyone laughed, and me, I smiled back, like always. But there were moments when that smile felt heavy. I remember one night, my mom's birthday, sitting at that table, listening to my dad talk about how family is the people who always show up, while Liam was at home eating alone, waiting for me to come back. That moment, for the first time, the secret didn't feel like protection anymore. It felt like distance, not between me and my family, but between me and my real life. And I started to realize I wasn't just protecting my happiness. I was slowly hiding it from myself. By that New Year's Eve, I was exhausted. Not from work, but from living 2 lives at once. A real life, where I was loved, where I was heard, and a performance life where I had to shrink myself to fit my family's expectations. 3 days before the dinner, my dad texted, "Be on time, family comes before work." I stared at that message for a long time. Not because it was new, but because I'd heard it for years. Only this time, it wasn't true anymore. Liam was in Texas, working in an area that had just been hit by floods. He offered to fly back early. I said no. "It's just a dinner," I told him. "Just a few hours. Just one more night of silence." But deep down, I knew I was reaching my limit. Not because they had changed, but because I couldn't keep doing this anymore. On the drive back to Greenville, I told myself, just like every other time, Just smile. Let it pass. But there was one thing I didn't realize then. Sometimes it only takes one sentence to break everything you've been holding in for years. And then, that sentence came, right there at the dinner table. My father raised his glass, looked straight at me and laughed. Still single at 35? Guess another new year alone, with regrets. A few people laughed, not because it was funny, but because they didn't want things to get awkward. Before I could react, my mother followed, her voice as gentle as ever. Some people are alone, for a reason. No one said anything else, but the air shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, just a very clear feeling. Every eye was on me, waiting to see what I would do. And in that moment, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel hurt. I just felt done. 8 years of silence. 8 years of smiling. 8 years of letting them believe their version of my life was true. I set my glass down, gently, looked straight at my father, and smiled. I'm not alone, I said. I've been married for years. The entire room froze. Explain. Now. My father's hand slammed down on the table, making the glasses rattle. That sound had silenced me for years. But this time, I didn't shrink. I picked up my phone, opened my photo gallery, and turned the screen toward them. The first photo, my wedding day. A small chapel, rain still clinging to the windows, Liam standing in front of me like he was holding the whole world. No one said a word. I kept scrolling. Puerto Rico. A neighborhood we helped rebuild after a storm. A gala event, him standing behind me, his hand resting lightly on my back. A cabin in the mountains, a dog asleep between us. 8 years. Unfolding in just a few seconds. My mother caught her breath. My brother went still. And my father... This is ridiculous, he said, but his voice wasn't steady anymore. Why would you hide something like this? I looked straight at him. I didn't hide it. You just never wanted to know. No one argued, because for the first time, the truth couldn't be ignored anymore. If you think the father in this story is selfish and cruel, leave A in the comments. No one was laughing anymore. No clinking of silverware, no polite small talk, just the truth sitting in the middle of the table. My father looked at me like he was trying to find a way to take control again. So this is our fault, he said, his voice low but tight. I shook my head. The choice was mine, I said, but the reason is in this room. I looked at my mother, then at my brother. Does anyone here actually know what I do? No one answered. Not the vague something in disaster relief? I continued. I mean, really understand it. Silence, I nodded. That's the problem. I didn't raise my voice, but every word was clear. I've shared, many times, but everything about me gets overlooked. A message, a photo, an achievement, all of it disappears the moment it's said. My mother started to speak, but I stopped her. So when I met someone who mattered, I took a breath. I didn't bring him here, and for the first time, no one could say I was wrong. No one argued, no one pushed back, because there was nothing left to deny. My father shoved his chair back and stood up. I'm not going to be spoken to like this in my own house. His voice still tried to hold authority, but I could see it. For the first time, he wasn't sure he was right. Then listen, I said. Not loud, not shaking, just clear. You called me lonely. You called me selfish. You said my work was meaningless. All of it. Just because my life doesn't look the way you understand. My mother started crying. My brother looked down. And me, I no longer felt the need for their approval. I didn't come here to be judged, I said. I came to stop asking permission to be myself. The room went completely silent. I put on my coat. You don't get to meet Liam, just out of curiosity, I said. If you ever meet him, it'll be when you've learned how to respect me first. I turned and walked away. No one stopped me. No one knew what to say. The door closed behind me. And for the first time in years, I didn't leave that house feeling like something was missing. But whole. I didn't get any calls that night, no apology texts, no explanations, just silence. But a few days later, things started to shift. Not loudly, but like small cracks slowly showing. My brother texted, I didn't know. Just 3 words. But enough for me to understand. For the first time, he realized what he had missed. I replied, that's the problem. My mom called 2 days later. I didn't pick up. The voicemail started with, your dad is really upset. I stopped it right there. For the first time, I didn't treat his emotions as my responsibility. A week passed. The story started spreading through the family. An aunt called my mom and asked, Is it true Hadley's been married for 8 years? A cousin dropped a link to one of my talks in the family group chat. Hadley's actually incredible. Why has no one ever said anything? And that's when things truly started to change. Not because of anything I said, but because the truth was finally being seen by people who had never tried to ignore it. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's this. You don't have to shrink your life to make other people comfortable. I spent years trying to become a version of myself that was easier to accept, staying quiet when I was misunderstood, smiling when I was dismissed, keeping the most important parts of my life out of my family's reach. I thought that was how you kept the peace. But the truth is, peace doesn't come from disappearing. It comes from being seen for who you really are. Love without respect eventually turns into control. A family that doesn't know how to listen becomes a place where you have to hide your own happiness. I'm not saying everything is healed. Trust takes time, change takes action. But one thing has changed forever. I no longer ask for permission to be myself. And you don't have to either. You have the right to live your life, to love who you choose, to build happiness your way, not by someone else's standards. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't staying and enduring. It's speaking the truth and walking away without looking back.